Look, if you're out here thinking PS3 RPGs are just relics of a forgotten era, you're about to get schooled. Some of the best, weirdest, and most underrated RPGs ever made are sitting right there gathering dust, while you're busy replaying the same remakes for the third time. So yeah, it's 2025 and I'm here to remind you, the PS3 still has RPGs worth your time. Let's crack open that vault. Let's kick things off with Star Ocean: The Last Hope, the fourth entry in a franchise that's been hopping through consoles like it's doing a new game plus across generations. It all started back in the Super Nintendo days, but this one came out swinging on the PS3 and Xbox 360 too. Now, some folks will tell you this game isn't as strong as the classics, and hey, nostalgia goggles are a hell of a drug. But they're wrong. This game goes hard. The story throws you right into a post-apocalyptic Earth and launches you into space to find humanity a new home. Classic JRPG stakes, but with a sci-fi twist that actually works. The characters are a mixed bag of anime tropes, sure, but the pacing keeps things moving and the world building is top-notch. You're not just hopping planets, you're unraveling the downfall of civilizations, diving into interstellar politics, and occasionally fist-fighting aliens with a sword that looks like it belongs in an anime opening. But let's talk combat, because that's where The Last Hope truly shines. It's real-time, flashy, and surprisingly deep once you stop mashing buttons. Each character has their own playstyle and special attacks, and switching mid-battle lets you chain combos like a maniac. There's also a blindside mechanic that rewards perfect dodges with devastating counterattacks. Get the timing down, and you'll feel like a space ninja. Add in skill trees, item creation, and absurd optional bosses, and you've got a combat system that still feels good in 2025. The PS3 version was already impressive for its time, but if you want it looking crisp, there's a remastered version on PS4 and PC. Still, even in its original form, this game holds up surprisingly well. Lost Dimension is one of those games that showed up late to the party, didn't get much attention, and quietly dipped before anyone realized how wild it actually was. Released in 2014, when the PS3 was already on life support, this tactical RPG blends turn-based combat with visual novel drama, and somehow makes it work. You play as a squad of psychic misfits trapped in a giant, mysterious tower. And your job isn't just to climb it. You've also got to figure out which of your teammates are secretly traitors. Yeah, 5 of them are planning to stab you in the back, and every time you clear a floor, 1 gets voted off the island by you. But that's where things get spicy. The game uses this judgment system where you collect clues during combat and talking to your squad mates, and you have to piece together who's lying. But don't expect a big flashing sign saying, "It's this guy." And the best part? The traitors are randomized in every playthrough, so you can't just Google your way through it. And your decisions have weight too, as choosing wrong means you could end up booting an innocent ally, one whose powers you desperately need, or letting a traitor stay and ruin your run later. Combine that with branching story paths and multiple endings, and what you get is a chaotic, tense, and surprisingly emotional experience. The gameplay leans into strategy-heavy turn-based battles, where positioning and psychic abilities are key. It's fast-paced but deep, especially when you factor in character synergies and special skills that trigger under certain conditions. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone, as Lost Dimension flew way under the radar, but it deserves a second life in 2025. The game's available on PS3, Vita, and even PC for dirt cheap during sales, and trust me, it holds up. If you want a strategy RPG that messes with your head just as much as your tactics, this one's a hidden gem worth unearthing. Tales of Xillia dropped during that awkward phase, where JRPGs were trying to figure out if they wanted to stay niche or start showing up to the party with confidence. Released on the PlayStation 3 back in 2013 in the West, after taking a 2-year vacation in Japan, it was a breath of fresh air for fans who were tired of begging for localizations that sometimes never came. Seriously, this was still a time when you'd hear, "Wait, this exists?" while browsing obscure gaming forums. But what sets Xillia apart is how it lets you pick your main character right out the gate. You've got Jude, the nerdy medical student who accidentally stumbles into a conspiracy, or Mila, the literal manifestation of a goddess with zero social skills and a ton of magical power. And your choice isn't just cosmetic, as the entire perspective of the story shifts based on who you choose, with different scenes, different interactions, and even a different opening animation. It's not full-on multiple storylines, but it adds real replay value. Combat-wise, this thing moves. It's action-based, fast, and fluid, leaning into the signature tales of style with real-time battles, flashy combos, and that classic Link art system that lets you chain attacks with your party members for extra damage and style. You'll feel it when the screen explodes in particle effects and you realize you've been mashing buttons like a maniac and it's actually working. Beyond that, Xillia sits at a turning point for the franchise, as it still holds onto the heart of the older titles, but you can feel the devs testing new systems and pacing to modernize the formula. It's a bit more cinematic, a bit more streamlined, but never loses that quirky Tales soul. The characters are strong, the world is rich, and the pacing keeps things moving without dragging you through 20 hours of setup. Honestly, this one's overdue for a remaster. If Tales of Grace's F got one, Xillia deserves it twice, but even if you're booting it up on a dusty PS3 in 2025, it still holds up. Let's talk about Persona 5. Yes, the original version, the one that dropped on the PS3 when everyone thought the console was already on life support. While the flashy Royal Edition on PlayStation 4 and now every other platform known to mankind got all the hype, this base version's still fire. You don't get the extra semester or the new characters from Royal, sure. But the core game, the story, the dungeon crawling, the social links, the vibes, it's all here, and it's still phenomenal. The whole thing runs at 720p on PS3, but don't let the numbers fool you. The art direction does so much heavy lifting that you'll forget you're playing on a system from the Blu-ray wars. From the moment Joker gets off that train, you're thrown into a world of corrupt adults, turn-based combat, and menus so stylish they could have their own fashion line. Combat in Persona 5 is smooth, turn-based, and all about exploiting weaknesses. You knock an enemy down, pass your turn to a teammate, chain attacks, and then finish with an all-out attack that explodes into a screen full of color and chaos. It's strategic but fast. No endless waiting around like old-school RPGs. Then there's the life sim part. One day you're battling demons in a hellish dimension inside a teacher's subconscious, and the next you're making coffee, leveling your kindness, and trying not to flunk your midterms. It's absurd but brilliant. And this balance between dungeon crawling and school life gives the game an addictive rhythm. And one more in-game day turns into 6 hours of real-time gameplay. And the soundtrack delivers absolute bangers from start to finish, with tracks like Last Surprise getting stuck in your head for days. So yeah, if you've got a PS3 collecting dust and you've never played Persona 5, you're missing out on one of the greatest JRPGs of all time, even in its original form. Quick break. If you're enjoying this trip through PS3 greatness, smashing that like button takes literally a second and helps a lot more than you think. Seriously, comments and likes are gold for the algorithm, so drop a comment and tell me, which PS3 RPG do you think still holds up like a champ in 2025? I read and reply to every single one. Let's talk about Human Revolution, the game that proved you could make a smart and stylish cyberpunk RPG way before Cyberpunk 2077 tried to do the same, with mixed results. This one comes straight from Eidos, under the Square Enix label, and honestly, it still hits hard. You step into the very cool trench-coated shoes of Adam Jensen, a security specialist who didn't ask for any of this, but got some pretty badass augmentations anyway. What follows is a slick, gritty, neon-drenched dive into a future where corporations pull the strings, everyone has an agenda, and every decision you make actually matters. Gameplay-wise, Human Revolution hits that sweet spot between stealth combat and RPG mechanics. You're dropped into open-ended levels where you can hack your way through every locked door, sneak past guards like a ghost, or just barge in with an arm cannon like an action hero. Every playstyle is valid, and the game actually respects your choices as dialogue changes, character relationships shift, and the world responds based on how you operate. The upgrade system is also solid. From X-ray vision to cloaking devices, hacking upgrades that turn you into a walking spy drone, or slow time mid-combat, each upgrade feels impactful and genuinely useful. Narratively, it's everything a cyberpunk fan dreams of. Shady conspiracies, transhumanist philosophy, morally gray choices, and just enough social commentary to make you question if your iPhone is spying on you. Spoiler, it probably is. Human Revolution may not have the flashiest graphics by 2025 standards, but it nails the atmosphere, pacing, and weight of your decisions in ways a lot of modern RPGs still struggle with. If you're into deep customization, narrative depth, and that old-school "your choices actually matter" design, Human Revolution is absolutely worth dusting off your PS3 for. Let's talk about Alpha Protocol, the spy RPG that tried to reinvent the genre and kinda succeeded, but only if you were patient enough to get past its rough edges. Developed by Obsidian, before they joined the Microsoft empire, this game is what happens when a studio known for deep choice-driven RPGs says, "You know what? Let's do James Bond, but chaotic neutral." You play as Michael Thornton, a secret agent caught in the middle of a mess that feels like it was written on 3 cups of coffee and 0 sleep. But that's part of the charm. On paper, it's a third-person action RPG, but what makes Alpha Protocol wild is how everything revolves around choice and consequence. And I'm not just talking about dialogue trees, with timed responses that actually feel like a real conversation, instead of a debate club session, though those are awesome. I mean choices that change entire missions, kill off characters, lock you out of plot lines, or turn allies into enemies depending on how much of a jerk or charmer you decide to be. Now, the combat, well, it exists. But let's just say you don't play Alpha Protocol for the buttery gunplay. The AI is a bit drunk, stealth can be hit or miss, and sometimes your bullets feel more like suggestions. But if you treat it like a spy simulator with RPG mechanics instead of a shooter, it starts to click. Especially when you realize your build, hacker, stealth ghost, aggressive tank, completely changes how you approach every mission. But the real magic is in how reactive the world is. You'll mess up, get betrayed, improvise mid-mission, and somehow come out feeling like it was your story all along. It's messy, unpredictable, and yeah, kind of a beautiful disaster. But in the age of ultra-polished games where choices barely matter, Alpha Protocol still feels refreshingly chaotic, and totally worth a spin in 2025. Let's talk about Mass Effect Trilogy, one of the most ambitious space operas ever crammed into a console that still used discs and made weird noises when loading. And I don't care what anyone says, I'll take Mass Effect over Dragon Age any day of the week. And I like Dragon Age, okay? But Mass Effect is a whole different beast. You start as Shepard, male or female, Paragon or Renegade, and from the first mission, the game locks you in with real choices that actually matter. And I don't mean choose-your-own-haircut kind of choices. I'm talking about political decisions, life or death calls, and full-blown consequences that follow you across 3 entire games. You're building alliances, making enemies, romancing crew members, and deciding who lives, who dies, and who's getting spaced out the airlock. The first game sets the stage. And okay, it's a bit clunky by today's standards, with combat that makes it feel like your character's moving around in concrete boots, but the lore and world building are absolutely phenomenal. Then comes Mass Effect 2, and I swear to you, it's one of the best RPGs ever made. The suicide mission alone is a masterclass in tension, where every choice you've made builds to one final, nerve-wracking payoff. And then Mass Effect 3 tries to wrap it all up. Does it stick the landing perfectly? Nah. But it does deliver jaw-dropping set pieces, emotional character arcs, and some of the best combat in the series. Oh, and let's not forget the squad. Garrus, Liara, Tali, Grunt. BioWare really went off creating a cast that feels like actual friends or, awkward romantic interests. Even on PlayStation 3, this trilogy feels massive. The performance holds up, the gameplay is solid, and the story still punches you right in the soul. And yeah, I know there's a remaster now, but if you've got the PS3 version lying around, it still delivers the full Mass Effect experience. Plus, with a new entry in the works, there's no better time to revisit the series and remind yourself why everyone fell in love with it in the first place. Resonance of Fate is one of those games that feels like it was designed by mad geniuses in a smoky room filled with empty coffee cups and anime figurines. And I mean that in the best way possible. Tri-Ace, the same brilliant minds behind Star Ocean and Valkyrie Profile, decided to go full chaos mode and create a turn-based RPG with guns, acrobatics, and a combat system that looks like a John Woo fever dream. The game drops you into a dystopian tower city where the sky is gone, everything sucks, and people basically live on top of each other in layered districts, ruled by class hierarchy and weird religious overtones. And you play as a ragtag crew of mercenaries trying to survive jobs, drama, and some seriously existential plot twists. But let's be real. You're here for the combat, and instead of basic attack and defend turns, you're flipping through the air, dual-wielding pistols, and planning bullet trajectories with precision. It's all about managing bezels, these little action points that let your characters run, jump, and shoot in stylish, over-the-top ways. Mess up your positioning or timing, and you're toast. But pull off a perfect tri-attack, and you feel like you just directed your own action movie. What makes Resonance of Fate even more interesting is how it blends strategy and spectacle. As it's not just flashy for the sake of it, there's depth here. And customizing your guns is practically a mini-game of its own. You'll be bolting scopes, barrels, and magazines onto your weapons like you're modding a Nerf blaster with military-grade tech. And despite flying under the radar when it launched on the PS3, it's aged incredibly well. And there's even a remastered version for PS4 and PC that sharpens up the visuals without touching the glorious weirdness underneath. So yeah, it's 2025, and this gem still deserves a spin. Especially if you're tired of cookie-cutter RPGs and want something that'll make you say, "What the hell is happening?" Final Fantasy XIII is the trilogy everyone loves to hate, until they actually sit down and play it. Yeah, I know the internet decided to drag it through the mud for years, but hear me out. Under all the drama, there's a bold, ambitious RPG experience that still feels fresh in 2025. The first game might hold your hand a little too tight in the beginning, but once it lets go, the combat system absolutely shines. You've got a fast-paced, cinematic battle system built around something called the Paradigm Shift, which lets you swap character roles on the fly. Healer, tank, blaster, whatever the moment demands. And yeah, it's linear, but so was Uncharted 2, and nobody complained about that. What 13 lacks in open worlds, it makes up for with style, polish, and an insanely beautiful presentation that still holds up ridiculously well. I mean, this game came out in 2009 and still looks better than half the retro-inspired stuff launching today. But the real fun kicks in with Final Fantasy XIII 2, which fixes a ton of what people didn't like in the first game. It throws the rails out the window and lets you time travel across wildly different eras, recruiting monsters, branching timelines, multiple endings, and way more player freedom. And then there's Lightning Returns, which gives you just 13 in-game days to stop the end of the world. It's got a real-time combat system, a ton of customization, and a ticking clock that adds this constant pressure to every decision you make. Love it or hate it, the trilogy tried new things, and that alone makes it worth checking out. So if you skip this one because of the bad press, 2025 is your perfect excuse to give it a real shot. First off, Ni no Kuni isn't just a game. It's a playable Studio Ghibli film, and I'm not even exaggerating. Sure, it technically started on the Nintendo DS, but let's be honest, the PS3 version is where it truly came to life. That's when Level 5, the minds behind White Knight Chronicles and Rogue Galaxy, teamed up with Studio Ghibli to create something that feels like a warm hug wrapped in turn-based battles and monster collecting. You play as Oliver, a kid who literally cries his way into a fantasy world after losing his mom. And no, I'm not making fun. That's the setup, and it hits hard. From there, you explore a vibrant, painterly world full of talking animals, sentient vegetables, and one very grumpy fairy with a lantern stuck to his nose. Combat is a hybrid system, part real-time movement, part menu-based attacks, and it's surprisingly deep. You can capture creatures called familiars, evolve them like Pokemon, assign roles in your party, and swap them out mid-fight depending on the enemy. Some are tanks, some are glass cannons, and some are just there because they look cool. And yeah, that's a valid strategy. And then there's the soundtrack, scored by none other than Joe Hisaishi, Ghibli's musical genius. The PS3 version may not be in 4K or 60 frames per second, but honestly, it doesn't need it. The art direction alone carries this thing, and even today it looks stunning because that Ghibli charm doesn't age, it just becomes more iconic. Alright, now it's your turn. Which of these PS3 RPGs do you think still deserves way more love? And did I miss any that should have made the list? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. And if you had fun, hit that like button and consider subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next.